Hello, I'm John Feldt, and this is the weekly water outlook for the Midwest for August 11th, 2013. Well, I really am keeping an eye on topsoil moisture because across the Midwest it really ranges from needing a lot of rain to doing pretty good. I don't like the coloring scheme here. I don't think it really tells the story. But generally speaking, the shades that are getting a little bit towards the aqua color, right in here for example, are tending to be on the wet side, and then areas in the brown are a little bit more towards the adequate. And then as we get into this lighter shades of brown, these are the areas that are dry. So we're really seeing, look at here, we have a little aqua, dark green or dark brown, light brown, medium brown. I think what that's saying here is that there's quite a variance in the amount of topsoil moisture, with some areas quite wet, some areas quite dry. Now, I did want to show, this is an image I show from time to time. It's the departure from average of greenness. So it takes say in Iowa what would normally be green with crops, and it compares it to what is currently green. And the areas in yellow are saying that those are areas that are less green than would be normal, and areas in green are greener than normal. And a little bit hard here to come to any real conclusions, pretty splotchy, but I do think we can sort of show that up here, parts of the upper Midwest, it does appear to be greener than normal. And I think the other prevailing trend is right in here in Iowa, parts of southern Minnesota. It looks like it's definitely trending towards less green than normal. Elsewhere here through the Midwest, it looks like it's really splotchy, and I think that's saying pretty close to normal for this time of year. So it's just another way that we can assess the condition of soil moisture through shrubs, foliage, and crops. Another way, we can look at the number of rain days. This is just over the last 7 days, and what I wanted to show you is, unfortunately, across Iowa here, we're looking at this shades of brown, and that's generally just maybe a day or so of rain over the last 7 days. Some areas maybe not at all. We really need to get into that green before we get more widespread rain, and you can see that parts of South Dakota, parts of Nebraska did have a fairly active area of rain, and anywhere from 4 to even 7 days, 6 or 7 days of rain in a very small section. But by far the area of most extensive rain and the really active axis of rain was down here from Kansas into Missouri into Tennessee and Kentucky. Very heavy rain in that area, flooding, flash flooding, saturated soils, and rivers running very high. So the jet stream this week, the steering winds, pretty much like we've seen for the last 2 or 3 weeks, we have an area of high pressure out to the west, area of low pressure off the northern part of the U.S., and that's really been what's driving our weather patterns now for quite some time. We really haven't seen a change. And I'm going to show you here in a minute, over the Midwest, there's some very clear type, especially temperature patterns with this. It's been below normal temperatures, but there are also precipitation type patterns. Now the tropics right now, sometimes that we do get tropical moisture into the Midwest. I wanted to point out right now the tropics are very quiet, no activity going on, very quiet. A couple waves coming off the African coast perhaps, but right now it looks like there's some inhibiting factors out there that are keeping things very quiet. So let's take a look at the past 7 days observed precipitation. And across the Midwest, with the exception of southern Missouri and parts of Kansas, it was a pretty quiet week. I always look at this shades of blue, that's only up to a ½ inch, so that area is really not all that significant rainfall. But the only area that was more significant rainfall here was in South Dakota, parts of Nebraska, very small part of Minnesota, small part of Iowa. That's about the only area where the rain was more significant. A little bit of a moderate rain in parts of Ohio, but pretty much everywhere else I think it was a very quiet week. And you can see that on the percent of normal precipitation, even though there was some, that area I mentioned here, that was 2, 3, 4 times normal. That was also the area that received about 6 days in a row of precipitation over southern parts of South Dakota. But very large areas here, these areas of red, those are below normal precipitation. Another interesting fact here, look at where it goes from above normal precipitation South here, southern Missouri, well above normal, and then well below normal over northern parts of the state of Missouri. This is an area that really needs some rain. It would have been nice to get some of that rain up there, but it just didn't work out that way this week. And matter of fact, some of the models I've noticed have really had a bias on bringing rain into northern Missouri. It just hasn't made it. So I thought you might be interested in seeing where does all that water going. I sort of tracked it here. It's on the Gasconade River, and eventually that's getting into the Missouri River, and eventually the Mississippi River, and working on downstream. Now I'm sure it'll attenuate as it goes downstream on the Mississippi River, but I did want to track and let you see where that water is going. Now, the Drought Monitor, I've been expecting this for a number of weeks. It's no surprise to me that finally Iowa has been classified with abnormally dry weather, even a little bit of a D1 now over west central Iowa. And I think that's going to continue to slowly expand in the area that's been very dry. Now, you see Nebraska, we're seeing western Nebraska D3, and now sort of an expansion over eastern Nebraska of D2. So we are beginning to see in that area that's been very dry, northern Missouri, large parts of Iowa, parts of Minnesota, parts of Nebraska, drought impacts beginning to expand due to the dry weather, not just over the last couple weeks, but now well through July and now into August. So the jet stream, I really don't see a whole lot of change. Matter of fact, that blue line is the exact position of where it was last week. I kept it in the same place. It's really not moving one way or the other. The yellow line is where it's going to dip later this week, and basically what that's going to do is just reinforce the type of weather that we've had. Now, sometimes these jet streams can be pretty active. You can get pulses of energy moving along them, but it really looks like the pulses of energy are going to be pretty weak, and consequently we might get the cool air with this system, but we're not going to get a whole lot of precipitation. Now, speaking of cool air, this is the anomalies of temperature so far in August, the 1st to the 10th. Blue are below normal temperatures, and you can see it aligns very closely with that upper jet stream. It sort of bows this way and then comes down this way, and when you get that jet stream bowing to the south, it allows cold air to pull down to the south, cooler air, and that's why we've had cooler air not just over the last week, but right well through July into August now. It's correlated to that upper jet stream. So, having said that, let's take a look at the forecast for the jet stream, and this is the 6 to 10 days. So we're getting into the middle of August, and I really don't see much change. This alignment here still looks at that ridge of high pressure and that dip of low pressure. That pattern is still pretty much in place right through the middle part of August and perhaps even later in August. I do see some changes late in August that could lift it a little bit further to the north, but right now I don't see any big trend that would change this, or at least the next couple weeks. Now, the rain forecast this week, let's take a look at that. There's going to be a series of fronts that are going to be sagging to the south with that jet stream, and with those fronts, the precipitation will also sag to the south. So most of the Midwest is going to be trending dry. Now, I didn't put dry because I do think there will be some precipitation, but I do think it's going to be, generally speaking, on the light side and below normal for this week. So I do think trending dry. Now, there could be some pockets of a little bit heavier rain nearing an inch, but I think for the most part, like I said, the heaviest rain will be to our south. Well, I thought it'd be interesting to look at weeks 3 and 4 to see if these trends change. This is looking quite a ways out there, and areas in green are above normal, areas in red are below normal. If we look at week 3, this is getting into the very last week of August. What we see here is a hint of maybe a little bit better chance of precipitation over the Midwest. I don't think this is a strong signal, though. I think this is something that is sort of iffy as far as it may or may not occur. I think you need the darker green to get a strong signal like you see here in the southeast U.S. This is week 4, early September. Again, it looks like pretty much weak signals one way or the other. So I'm going to call it right now that the pattern that we've had is going to continue pretty much the rest of the month. Perhaps not as dry. I think it might get some uptick in precipitation, especially that week 3. But I think I don't see any real clear-cut signs that we're going to break this trend of below normal precipitation and cooler than normal temperatures. So the soil moisture outlook for the next 2 weeks for the Midwest, it does look like we're going to continue to have drying soils. The areas of the eastern Midwest, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, that area is now beginning to dry out as well. And you can see that the more significant soil moisture decreases, those are shades of brown, are occurring in those regions over the next couple weeks. So for today's briefing, the takeaway points: let's continue the existing trends of below normal temperatures, below normal precipitation into the foreseeable future right now. And that doesn't mean no rain, it just means below normal. And this will be a very persistent pattern. I'll be keeping an eye on this, and any sign I see of it breaking, either with tropical moisture being pulled into the Midwest, which I don't see at all, or changing the upper pattern, I'll let you know. Now this week, on Thursday, I'm going to issue the long-range outlook, and I will be issuing sector updates throughout the week. I appreciate you listening to this briefing. I will be updating this next week.